We're diving into philosophy today. But not just any philosophy, we're tackling a big one. What even is philosophy?
Not skimming the surface here. We're on a grand tour across history to see how the greatest minds answered that very question.
I like it. It's funny, though, even defining philosophy is a philosophical debate.
It's wild how those old ideas still matter so much today.
Totally. So let's start in ancient Greece, where Western philosophy was born. People just sitting around thinking about the universe, asking huge questions, and, lucky for us, writing some down.
And one was Socrates, who said philosophy is the intellectual pursuit of truth and goodness.
Sounds simple, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, tons more. Socrates thought this wasn't just for academics, but a way of life. Always questioning, always seeking wisdom.
He didn't just talk the talk, though, right? He did the Socratic method,
Yeah.
using questions to make people think critically.
Exactly. And that method, still used today in schools, courtrooms, even when you're trying to see someone else's point of view. All about asking the right questions to find the truth.
What a legacy. But Socrates wasn't alone. His student, Plato, came along with his own take. He was big on forms, right?
Right. Imagine a cave. People only see shadows on the wall, thinking that's reality. Plato believed what we sense is just a shadow of a higher reality, the forms, perfect, unchanging concepts.
Honestly, sounds kind of out there. What's a real-world example of a form?
Think of beauty. We see beautiful things, but what makes them beautiful? Plato would say they're reflecting the form of beauty, existing in that higher realm of perfect concepts.
Plato really went deep. This allegory of the cave, does it still matter today?
For sure, it says maybe there's more to reality than what we see and touch.
Yeah.
Like justice, love, or a perfect circle. Do those exist physically, or are they something more?
Mind-bending. But let's move to another giant Aristotle, Plato student. He was more grounded, scientific, right?
Right, while Plato looked to the sky for those forms, Aristotle observed the natural world, categorizing everything.
So his big takeaway, what's the one Aristotle insight that's shaped Western thought?
Aristotle thought everything has a purpose, a final cause, like an acorn's purpose is to be an oak tree. This idea, everything striving towards something, had huge impact from biology to ethics.
And he's the one behind the first cause argument. Yeah, something had to start the universe moving.
Exactly. That became a main point in arguments for God's existence, still debated today.
What a lasting impact. So we've got these guys laying the foundation of Western thought, but I'm guessing not everyone agreed on everything, right?
Of course not. Next up, we'll meet some philosophers who challenged everything, focusing on what's a good life.
Woo, now that's relatable. Now let's dive into this good life idea. Time to meet the rebels who dared to define it themselves.
So, the good life, huh? Well, let's meet two guys with different approaches, but both focused on happiness. Epicurus and Diogenes.
Same goal, different paths. I like it. Tell me more.
Imagine. Beautiful day, sun's out, you want an amazing meal? Epicurus would say, go for it. Enjoy every bite, but keep it moderate. He thought true happiness was avoiding unnecessary desires, finding pleasure in simplicity, tranquility.
Interesting. Not the Epicurean we think of today, all about luxury.
Funny how words change, right? But you're right, it's evolved. But Epicurus wasn't about denial, more like don't be ruled by your desires. Finding joy in the simple things, his recipe for happiness.
Makes sense. Now, what about Diogenes? How is his happiness different?
If Epicurus was moderation, Diogenes was radical simplicity. Picture a guy who chooses to live in a barrel, not because he has to, but because he thinks that's true freedom.
Wait, for real? A barrel?
Legend has it, yeah. He rejected all the norms, material stuff, embraced minimal needs, maximum self-sufficiency.
Now that's commitment. I like simplifying, but a barrel might be a bit much.
Huh, right. But that was Diogenes always shaking things up. And the thing is, his ideas about ditching materialism, finding freedom in simplicity, really similar to modern minimalism.
Totally. Definitely a connection. So, Epicurus moderation, Diogenes radical simplicity. What's the takeaway for us today?
It shows how we're still debating the good life. Is it being content with what we have or enjoying pleasures responsibly? Maybe both. These questions are just as relevant now as they were back then.
No easy answers there. Up to us to decide what our own good life looks like. Okay, next stop on our philosophy tour.
Fasten your seatbelts. We're heading to the Islamic Golden Age. Time to meet thinkers who took Greek thought and ran with it.
Ooh, the Islamic Golden Age. Always loved this period. Such a mix of ideas and cultures, right?
Totally. A melting pot. We'll meet Al-Kindi, the philosopher of the Arabs, thought philosophy is the highest knowledge because it sought universal truths.
Ambitious. Who else was shaping thought back then?
Well, there's Al-Farabi, who thought philosophy wasn't just about understanding the world, but using that to better ourselves and society. Saw a link between intellectual and moral growth.
Love that. Knowledge for self-improvement. Any other big names we should know?
Definitely Ibn Rushd, or Averroes to the West. He was amazing at connecting different ideas, especially about reason and faith.
Interesting. Bridging philosophy and religion.
Exactly. He said both could lead to truth and actually work together.
Quite a perspective, especially then. What impact did that have?
Huge. His work on Aristotle was hugely influential, not just in the Islamic world, but medieval Europe too. Shaped how people saw reason, faith, and knowledge for centuries.
Talk about leaving your mark. Okay, the Islamic Golden Age, clearly a turning point for philosophy. Ancient wisdom preserved, debated, expanded on.
Exactly. Shows how philosophy isn't bound to one time or place. It's an ongoing conversation across cultures and generations.
So true. It's like this giant tapestry of human thought, always evolving, with each generation adding its part. Speaking of unique views, ever heard of the Brethren of Purity?
Oh yeah, fascinating group. Secret society during the Islamic Golden Age, known for their, well, eclectic take on knowledge and their unique definition of philosophy.
Okay, you got my attention. What made their definitions so unique?
Imagine, not just reading about philosophy, but living it, applying it every day. That was the Brethren. They thought it was holistic, loving, learning, seeking truth, and living by it.
So not just big thoughts, but actually acting on them.
Exactly. They believed real understanding changes how you live, how you interact with the world.
Powerful idea. Knowledge without action is like a book never read.
Okay, we've covered a lot, from the Greeks to the Islamic Golden Age. What's next?
Get ready for a shush. We're going into the minds of Descartes, Locke, and Kant. They changed how we understand knowledge itself.
All right, Descartes, Locke, Kant, big names coming up.
Huge. These guys are like the rock stars of how we understand knowing itself.
They really shifted things, didn't they? It's like before them, philosophy was all about the world out there, right? Figuring out reality, the good life, all that. But these guys, they turned inward, wanted to understand knowledge itself.
So less about what is, more about how do we know it at all.
Exactly. It's like they said, hold on, before we tackle the universe, let's figure out the tool we use to do that. Our own minds.
And that's where Descartes drops his famous line, right? I think, therefore I am.
Talk about a philosophical mic drop. He's saying basically, even doubting you exist proves something's doing the doubting.
When you put it that way, it's kind of trippy. So our ability to think is the most basic truth there is for Descartes.
Exactly. Our senses could be wrong. The world might not be what it seems. But our own existence as thinking beings, that's undeniable.
Powerful stuff. But I'm guessing not everyone just agreed with him and that was that.
Of course not. That's what's great about philosophy. It's a conversation going on for centuries. And that's where John Locke jumps in with a different view.
Hit me with it. What was Locke's big idea?
Locke was all about empiricism, meaning knowledge comes from experience, from our senses. We're born blank slates, and life, our experiences, those right on the slate, shaping who we are, what we know.
So if I'm getting this, Descartes thought our minds could figure things out on their own. Locke thought it was all about what we experience.
Exactly. The classic debate, nature versus nurture, reason versus experience. Both sides have good points, don't they?
For sure. Now what about Kant? Where'd he fit in?
Kant, oh man, always trying to bridge the gaps. He thought both Descartes and Locke had points, but also limits.
Okay, I'm hooked. How do you do that?
Think of looking at a painting. Locke would say the experience, colors, shapes, that's your knowledge. And he'd be right, kinda.
But there's more to it than just that, right?
Exactly. Kant would say our minds aren't passive. We don't just absorb, we organize, structure what we sense, using built-in ideas like space, time, cause, and effect.
So not just what we see, but how our brains make it make sense.
Exactly. Kant thought we can't know reality directly, only how it appears to us, filtered through our minds, like we're wearing these philosophical sunglasses that change how we see everything.
Wild. So we've gone from figure out the universe to figure out how we even figure out the universe. Quite a journey.
It really is. And it's not over yet. We've got Fichte and Hegel. Next, German idealism. Things are going to get even more conceptual.
German idealism. Music to my ears. Bring it on.
All right. So Fichte. He thought philosophy itself isn't about fixed answers. It's the process of always seeking knowledge, understanding ourselves better, a constant journey. not a destination.
So philosophy is an action, always changing, not a hunt for one final truth.
Exactly. And Hegel, he takes this even further. History itself, for Hegel, is reason unfolding. Humanity's understanding of itself, of the world, it's always evolving, like we're all in this huge play of consciousness, always moving.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but I kind of love it. So how did Hegel's ideas impact other thinkers?
Huge impact. His stuff about history, progress, it influenced tons of people. Karl Marx, for example, he used Hegel's ideas and his critique of capitalism.
Amazing how these philosophy ideas spread out, changing things way beyond just philosophy itself.
Right. It shows how connected knowledge is. Philosophy isn't some separate thing. It's the ground where so many other ideas grow from.
Love that image. So we've covered so much ground, from the Greeks to modern thought. But before we wrap up, gotta bring it back to today. Why does any of this matter now?
The million-dollar question, right? It's easy to think with all the info overload we have now that philosophy is just old ideas irrelevant to daily life.
Well, I think we've proven that's not true at all.
Exactly. It's more relevant than ever because it gives us tools to think critically about the biggest questions facing us. Technology, ethics, our place in the universe. These are philosophy's bread and butter for centuries.
And these questions aren't going anywhere, are they?
Nope, getting more complex all the time. That's why having these philosophical tools is so important.
So true. Philosophy helps us make sense of things, deal with life's messiness, and hopefully live more meaningful lives.
Exactly. And it starts with being curious, never taking things for granted, always asking questions.
Beautifully put. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into philosophy, we want to leave you with a question to think about. If philosophy is all about asking the big questions, what's one question about existence, knowledge, or being human that you find most pressing today?
What a great question to consider. Keep those philosophical minds working, everyone.
Absolutely. Philosophy isn't about just the answers, it's about the journey of asking, exploring, and wondering. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep searching, keep thinking, and keep asking those big questions.